Whether you're married or single or poly or ace, or hanging out with swingers back at your place, listen to us as we give no fucks. On Tinder and Bumble and plenty of yucks, trying and having no luck, because we all know dating kinda sucks. Sarah and Adam are two of a kind. He says stupid shit and she doesn't mind. They're not doing this show to make any bucks. Life as a chicken whose feathers they pluck. Why does it work? Well, here is the crux. They both know dating kinda sucks. Dating kinda sucks.
Hi, I'm Adam Heath Avitable.
And I'm Sarah.
This is the DKS Podcast, a podcast about love, sex, culture, and society. This week, we'll be talking about pretty privilege. Is it a real thing? Enjoy the show.
And hey, YouTube, thanks so much for watching. As you're watching, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single show episode or other YouTube short that we post.
I haven't had any really controversial ones recently, so.
Oh, no? No controversial things?
No, not too recently. So, hi, we're here recording again while you are in Chile. This will be our second and probably last episode while you're in Chile.
Definitely last one for sure.
Yes. And we've been having some fun getting the internet set up and everything like that. So
it's been bad.
Just be aware, listeners, that if you hear an occasional robotic nature of something or a sound drops off for a second, it's just because there's a little bit of an internet issue occasionally.
There's always internet issues when I travel, I feel like, no matter where I go.
Yeah,
so.
it seems like it's gonna happen.
That's all right. But yeah.
So we have a kind of a fun episode because we're doing a couple things a little different.
As you might have heard when we started the episode, even my mind, I knew what you were going to say. I was like, that's different.
I bet nobody even noticed, and now they're gonna have to go back and replay it to hear what we just said. Yeah, it's good.
Maybe OG listeners will have picked up on it. The first,
a little bit different. Yeah. But we know we have a couple of different things that we're gonna do today. One that's going to be, I think, pretty entertaining, and then one that might drive Sarah mad. So we'll see how it goes.
Look, we just know that we're going to argue this episode, so we're just laying it out real early.
Yes, Sarah's already hung up on me once today, so let me just say that. And that was in our preparatory discussion of the episode,
which typically we don't do. So that's kind of a big deal as well. Normally,
exactly.
We just write an agenda and wing it, and we're like, whatever the fuck happens. So
yeah. So who would have thought? But
not me.
Yeah. Well, I know that neither of us really have anything going on in our lives that's really worth talking about over the last since the last episode. It's been 2 weeks of nothing.
I just did like a full moon setting intentions little ceremony downstairs, which was nice. So I feel calm at the moment.
Oh, is that the thing that you had to do? The
discussion.
Exciting thing that you had to do before we recorded?
I didn't have to do it. I wanted to do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a group activity. We have group activities probably every other night. So this was tonight's thing. And since there's a beautiful full moon and it's pretty here in Chile, why not?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I know that's not your thing. You don't like astrology or any of that, but
yeah, I mean, the moon's cool. I think the moon is a cool looking celestial object, so I do enjoy.
Well, that's cool. I guess
a nice big full moon always looks very cool.
Yeah.
I had a what would you say it was a full moon? What?
It was just a full moon gathering. It was just a celebration of the full moon, setting intentions, just sharing, learnings, and we're harvesting our learnings from the past 2 weeks. New moons are really for setting intentions, is what I learned. So.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear the dogs barking?
I cannot.
No. Oh my God. So that's been the other thing. I can never sleep here because the dogs just randomly start barking at all hours of the day and night. So
lovely.
Earplugs have been helpful, but not really. So
yeah. Well, that's lovely.
Kind of over it. Can you tell? Kind of over it.
I bet. Yeah. Tonight I had an Avitable gathering, and my father and I set our intentions of eating chicken sandwiches for dinner. So that was basically what we did. Yeah. That was good.
Celebrating the new moon or full moon with chicken. Okay.
Talking to my dad about all of his trips he's got planned. He's very, very excited.
Good for your dad.
I know. Since we don't really have anything else to talk about beyond that, before we get into this, there was one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I thought this was just kind of interesting, is I have a friend who is dating this guy, and it seems like he owns a couple of restaurants, and one of them is an Irish like bar, Irish pub, and every like St. Paddy's Day is like the hugest day of the year for them. Like that's their just biggest thing, because they have like a full week festival, and like other, they're just like it's tons of things. And then afterwards, he just gets so overwhelmed with his life and with everything that has to happen and all the things, because he's been working so hard on the business stuff, that he's broken up with her two years in March, or right after.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they've broken up. Like he's basically gotten so overwhelmed, and then she gets very like insecure because he's like kind of disappearing a little bit. It's not like he just kind of he pulls back. He's not even working at this point. It's after it's over. He kind of he like gets overwhelmed with everything, and he kind of and then he pulls back a little bit to try to like, I think, take care of, figure out what his shit is going on. And then she gets really needy and reaches out more aggressively, and then it pushes him away more. They have this cycle. And it's extremely unhealthy, but everything else about the relationship is great, except for this one period of time that's now happened twice. And, and so they've broken up twice for like the same reason, basically the same reason. And it was really interesting because she and I talking about it, I figured out that like his need is, he sees like even a relationship as an obligation, like just because it's it's another obligation. And so when he starts getting overwhelmed, like, what am I going to do for the next quarter? How are we going to make sure we're going to meet our numbers, blah blah blah. And then he's got kids he's got to worry about, and everything else, and other things he wants to do in his life. And so it's like he can't juggle her, right? Basically. And the relationship is kind of his expendable thing. But I think all he needs is a little bit of space, whereas her need is actually, she has like a kind of an attention attachment style, where she's been abandoned many times. And so the idea of being abandoned again is very like triggering for her. So she clings harder when he's trying to separate. Harder. So basically they both have these toxic cycles. His toxic cycle is this need to try to like not see his partner as someone who you can rely on, who's there to support and help, but as another obligation, which I think is an issue that he needs to work on. But then hers is that as soon as he starts to step away, she starts to push him, because she starts to get so needy that she starts to freak out. And so then it turns into this cycle where then she actually does, like, she's always going to leave me. He's going to leave me. And then she pushes him away until he leaves her, because she makes it so hard for him to even see her as anything other than an obligation. And it's bad. It's
question. Okay, but then how did they end up getting back together the first time? What was that conversation? Every time,
as soon as he calms down, he's like, "Oh, I miss you. Like, I can't believe I did that." And then
oh my god.
Yeah. And they talk about it, and he like last year he promised to go to therapy, and apparently he wasn't actually going to therapy. He was going to like a relationship coach, by the way, which was like yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we know about that, so. Yes.
But she's been doing better this year because she's been more reserved.
But they still broke up?
No, they haven't broken up yet, but I think it's coming. But I feel like it might be coming.
Okay.
Because like he was telling her that he didn't feel like he's a good boyfriend and need a good partner, and she deserves that, and like he just feels bad, and it just adds more pressure to him. And she's trying to say, listen, I've been giving you the space this year. Like I've actually gotten better, and I'm relaxing and giving you the space, and you need to figure this out. And I was just but like in the interim, she's also terrified to like call him just to say, hey, how's your day going? Because she's afraid that anything she does is going to push him away.
And he'll lash out because he's too stressed to want to deal with.
And not even lash out, but he'll just start to get pulled back more and more. And so it really is a toxic, like it's two toxic traits clashing together and making this like toxic storm. And it's unfortunate. And it got me thinking too, like about myself. And I think that's part of like what I do when I go on these initial dates with someone, but then I get overwhelmed before that. I'm not even in a relationship, with everything else I have to do. And I realize how much more important everything else I have to do is, rather than meeting random strangers on a date or meeting a relative stranger for a second date, like, and then I will actually pull back and just be like, it's not worth it to me. But I can't imagine, once I would get into a relationship with someone, I would see them as a partner and be able to actually, have them as support and use them in like as a, like, hey, this is what I'm going through, and talk to them about it. And I think
you're just not over the hump of being in a relationship
yet.
Like you're stopping yourself.
Still, like, I stop myself before I get to that. But thinking or talking to her about him has made me realize that I kind of have a almost similar thing, but I don't think that I would get to the point where I would be in a relationship and then push somebody away, because I don't think that that's how, if I decide to make a relationship work, it's because I think that person is of value to me in my life, not an obligation to me.
Right. No, I agree with that. And I think them going through it a second go around is more telling of how it should be, like that they should part ways if they're still having this problem after 1 year of having the issue, talking it through, and they thought they got a resolution, but they didn't. And clearly, like, they're still not communicating on things. They're still not, like, they didn't prep beforehand and say, hey, this is about to be a stressful time. Let's review what we did last year so we don't fuck ourselves over this year.
Well, this time she actually told him, she was talking to him on the phone recently. She actually told him, you do this every March. And then he was like, wow, I do. Like, he was completely unaware. And I think there's other issues other than St. Patty's Day. I think there's probably something that, like, maybe his divorce happened in or whatever. There's got to be other things that happened in March that make it like this month that he all of a sudden gets like some type of weird psychological trigger and gets overwhelmed. And I feel like his probably past partners have been obligations. Like, he makes decent money and like they relied on him and everything like that, but she's independent. They don't live together. Like, she has her own life. And I think that if he could see her as like, hey, you're a valuable person who, like, I could use your input. I could, like, you help, or, like, you come help me do this stuff, like, you'd be even my wingman. And as far as like business meeting, or business, like, because a lot of his business meetings, quote unquote, are like social events. And she's very good at that, going out and helping take the burden off him a little bit to talk to people. But it's definitely a failing on his part, but then trying to help her avoid continuing to spiral when it gets worse. It's been, I've been playing counselor for the last couple of weeks, but it's gotten me to reflect on myself a little bit as well.
I love to hear that. Good, because I'm sick of hearing you tell the same story over and over again with your first or second dates, and I'm like, I've said it on here. Pattern. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I know. It really is. It is such a bad pattern.
But you recognize it, and I think this was even more telling that you're like, oh, okay, don't want to keep doing this. Will it stop me
from going back on Bumble
Probably
when I'm
not.
laying in bed bored? No, not at all. Of course not.
No, but you'll be like, I should do better. I really should this time.
Right.
But not enough.
Yeah, we'll see. And it is actually finally, I think a lot of it too is the idea of driving to Salt Lake City, but now the snow is finally stopping. And we have weather in the 50s and 60s starting, and so that might help as well. We'll see.
Oh boy,
I know. And then on a more serious note too, I wanted to say this, and I think it's just because I think it's important for our listeners to hear too. So an ex of mine that I'm very good friends with called me, and she had, and I told you about this. She's married now. And her husband travels for work, so he was gone, and she wanted to invite a girlfriend over to come over and like play video games or whatever, because she's a big into like the PS5 or whatever. And so she calls this one girlfriend and says, come on over, let's drink and play video games. And the girlfriend's like, okay, I'm gonna bring our buddy, we're gonna call him Felipe. That might actually be his real name. I don't know, we'll call him Felipe, whatever. I think that is his real name, because if he ever hears this, I want him to know he's a piece of shit. So
Todd, why didn't you just go with the basic name?
Because I know a Todd, and I like Todd. I don't know any Felipes. So
sorry, Todd.
Yeah. So she's there, and there's a knock at her door, and she opens the door, and it's just Felipe. Now, my ex and Felipe had an issue before, where he had gotten a little inappropriate with her and had kind of like been aggressively flirting, even though she was dating someone and then engaged to them and now married to them. and wasn't like relenting. And so she had stopped talking to him. And so she was not thrilled about the fact that her friend was bringing Felipe with her, but she was like, well, whatever, I can, it's fine. Well, there's a knock at the door. It's just Felipe. And she texts her friend, and her friend's like, oh yeah, I couldn't make it, but I figured you guys could catch up and it'd be a good way for you guys to maybe mend those fences and everything, which mending those fences makes it sound like it was something that they both did wrong. Happened. Well, yeah. that or it was both them, they got into an argument or something and they had to fix it. Not he was being a piece of shit and they
both want to fix it.
Right.
That's the other thing. Yeah.
And because my ex is so like, she's very nice. She's very much about, she tone polices herself all the time and will not, aggressively stand up for herself sometimes because she's just like, I didn't want to start a scene, etc. So she's like, all right, fine, whatever. So she invites him in to play games or something like that. And they're having a drink and playing games. And I guess at one point, and I don't know what exactly happened, he tries to pull her pants down. And
for what? But like, for why?
I don't know.
What were they possibly doing?
Yeah, that's how was that appropriate? My guess is that she probably got up to change the game or get a drink or something, or was petting her dog or something, and he just couldn't handle himself. Apparently, because
how old is a grown fucking man?
This is a grown adult. Yes, this is a man in at least his 30s, and tries to literally pull down her pants. And she looks at him and is like, "What the hell is that?" And he's like, let's have some fun," and tries to go for it again.
Again, so, after she already stopped.
Yeah, like, what the fuck are you doing? And he was like, come on, basically. And so she kicks him out. And then, and tells him, you never talk to me again.
As she should.
Yes. And then blocks her, texts her friend and said, you're a terrible person. Like, like this is what just happened, and blocks her friend as well. And then calls me and was telling me about it. And she, like, I think she felt guilty, like she had done something wrong. And so the point of me telling the story is to make it very clear that the only person who's at fault when there's a case of something like this is the person who performs the assault, the person who commits, not performs, let's say, commits the assault, the person who did the action. It's not her fault. Like, it doesn't matter that she let him in the house and she thought she'd be nice. She was trying to be nice. It's the fact that she
didn't willingly put, like, whether the situation was something she wanted to be in the situation with him in the room or not. Doesn't matter. Right. It's the fact that he did it.
The fact that he did it. And that's all that matters. And she has trouble feeling guilty about things like that sometimes, because she works in the service industry, and sometimes like she'll be somewhere where she's like, oh, well, somebody like grabbed my butt or whatever. I guess I shouldn't have been so nice to them serving them drinks. And I'm like, no, that wasn't your fault. You didn't like open the door for them to grab your butt. They felt entitled to it because they're pieces of shit. It has nothing to do with you. And I think it's important for everybody to hear that and to think about that if you are in a situation and someone chooses to assault you, the fault lies entirely with them. And you need to understand that it's okay to give yourself a break and not feel guilty about that because you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought I wanted to share that, because she was afraid to tell her husband, because he would blame her for it, but because she felt guilty about it, and she felt like she committed, she's like, I feel like I cheated on him. I'm like, you didn't do anything. Yeah. And I was like, I think you should definitely tell him, and she goes, well, he might also murder Felipe. And I was like, okay, well, that, that's true. Felipe probably deserves it though. But yeah.
I don't know if him getting kicked out was enough for him to get it.
I don't think so. If he didn't already get the fact that she was giving him another chance after he was inappropriate before.
He did it twice.
And then,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't get it.
No.
And I'm sure in their household, they're just being like, oh, she was so dramatic about it. It wasn't even that big of a deal. And it's like not even respecting someone's body or just acknowledging how they might feel.
Yes.
It's not okay.
Agreed. Yeah. And I don't think he got it, but I don't know. But hearing her feel guilt about it was something that it was really, really hard to hear, and trying to help her, realize that it wasn't her fault, and that, just
because she feels like she put herself in that situation. So that's kind of like what she should have anticipated happening, which like you can't anticipate those things happening, or like you want to assume people aren't going to be shitty, even if you don't like them. You're like, maybe they'll be a good person this
You're
go
going to
around.
assume, hey, why would they ever do something like that when they know that's not okay and that's never acceptable?
Yeah. They wouldn't do that on public with someone they don't know. So why would they do that? Yeah. Okay.
And if they were hanging out with a guy, I bet, and the guy tried to do it to them, I bet they would understand boundaries and consent really quickly too.
Real fast, 100%.
So yeah. Anyways, that was just something I wanted to bring up and kind of talk about. And I think that it's always important to know that you're not at fault and to get rid of it and not have that feeling of guilt.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was gonna say with that, I mean, we could listen to caller questions and call out some countries as well before we
why don't you give our shout outs?
Before we put the caller question up there. So let's shout out to Barbados, the Dominican Republic, and Slovenia for being our top countries listened to lately. So that's exciting. I know we've had Barbados obviously before, and they're back.
We've had actually, I think all three of them at some point. We've been
no, you're top. Right.
So
yeah.
I just wonder if there's just a small group of listeners that are like re-listening or they're finally catching up or something like that. It's always interesting to me to see that the different countries where we like peak in their country.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're happy you're here. So thank you for that. And for all listeners, if you want to call our hotline, because we'll get into the hotline question next, you can call that number. It's 407-519-0181. We've got a couple in the queue right now, which I'm really excited. I'm like, Adam, we should just do a whole episode on listener calls. And you're like, no, Sarah, we need to talk about pretty privilege. And I'm like, but I don't want to argue with you. We should just do listener questions. But we'll get to this listener question now.
Yes, and this one is definitely not a it's not a question actually. It's just a kind of a statement, but I thought it was interesting to share. And last time we had a question, by the way, there was I don't want to say
we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that. Okay,
let's mention that real quick. There was I had mentioned that to me, like, is someone not sharing the same interest in movies and TVs, it is a deal breaker. And apparently in my mind, I gave a lot of context to it, but Sarah said she re-listened to the episode and I didn't give any context. I just said it's a deal breaker and without any actual perspective on it. Right.
Is anyone surprised that Adam is incredibly black and white on issues? No one's surprised by that. He said something like anime watching libertarian. I don't like you said something like that because you went on a libertarian rant as well. And I was like, let's reel it back in. But yeah, you didn't really say. I was the one giving more leeway, and you're like, nah, well, it's a deal breaker. It's a deal breaker. Yeah. Which I'm not surprised. That's just your personality. You go hard on where you stand, which is fine.
Well, but I thought I would clarify too for those that might be confused is why is that a deal breaker? And I just wanted to say that for me, movies and TVs are important. Like I enjoy, like it's kind of a thing. Like I like going to the movie theater, it's a very, like, that's kind of my happy place. I love like smart writing and I love like Easter eggs and shows. And I love all the little behind the scenes stuff and just the entertainment industry in general. So like a new TV show that I'm going to look forward to is something important. It's something that I want to share with somebody. And so if they don't like the same things, they don't have to like everything like identically, but if they don't like the same general things, then that's a deal breaker for me because that is part of who I am. That's part of a major interest of mine. And so that's why it's a deal breaker for me. And I did do a poll in our Facebook group. And I asked
just to prove your
just to see what people would say. I didn't because I didn't know what other people would say. And I basically said, is it, I didn't put any other context. I just said, is someone not liking the same movies and TV shows or genres of movies and TV shows a deal breaker for you? And I had yes, it's very important to me. No, I don't care about it. And then I had a maybe, and then asked people to give context in the comments. And I would say that the majority of it actually was about probably like 70% yes and maybe. And then it was about like 28% no. So
that's so hard to say yes or no, yes, no, and maybe though.
I mean,
no. But what are your other options? I don't know.
Yeah, what are the other options? I mean, but and the maybe people had good points, but a lot of them were like, yeah, that's important to me because I want to be like some of them were like, I had a boyfriend who would make fun of every show that I watched, but then he would only watch sports or something like that, and so I kind of thought that was a that makes sense. that you'd want to have the same thing. And I think sports is one of those big things too. Like if someone only watches sports, like what's the point of us even dating? Because you're going to want to watch sports all the time and I'm not going to have any desire to do that. So
I feel like you said that last time we talked, but yeah.
Did I? About sports?
Bring that point home. Let's go. Let's go.
And if you're an anime watching sports loving libertarian, well, you can just go, you know, suck an asshole.
The hills that you die on, I swear. Meanwhile, I'm just like, let's try to be somewhat accepting, and maybe there's a chance to learn and grow. And you're like, nah, fuck that.
No, like I want someone who's going to enhance my life. I want someone that I can watch a TV show with, and then we can sit there and talk about all the cool little parts, like you and I do when there's shows that we like, where I'll be like, hey, this part, and we'll actually like dissect scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's not every show.
That's important to me. That's something that I really enjoy doing. So if I'm dating someone who has no interest in doing that, then I'm like, why do I even want to fucking talk to you then? So
because you can find other things to like about them.
I did one person, the most toxic person I ever dated, Olivia. I remember dating her. What are you shaking your head because I named her?
No, just calling out by name. Okay, let's go.
She's the one that ended up getting pregnant, and I took her, not with me, but like a year later, and I had to take, and she called me to.
You've never called her by name, I don't think.
No, I don't think I have, but I called her. It's been years now, and I called her to pick her up from the abortion clinic. She called me to pick her up because she had no other friends, and we had been broken up for a year, and she had nobody else to call to pick her up, and and everything. Yeah. Anyways, her. I remember at one point I had something that was coming on that I was really excited to watch with her because I was like, it's one of my favorite things. And she wouldn't put her fucking phone down the entire time. Like we're trying to watch it. And like there's moments that I wanted her to watch. Like I wanted to appreciate with her.
That's an issue. Yeah. I totally see where you're coming from with that for sure.
I remember I kept pausing it. I was like, oh, I'll wait till you're done on your phone. And then she'd put her phone down for all of 10 seconds and then pick it up again. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that's kind of rude. But okay, glad we touched on that for a second time on this show. Maybe a third next week. Who knows?
All right. So once again, before we get into the hotline call, you can call and leave a message, leave a question, whatever you want about dating, sex, relationships, culture, society, all types of things, whatever you want to talk about. Would love to hear from you. And that is at 407-519-0181. And for right now, we're going to hear from Emily.
Hey guys, it's Emily. I'm a brand new listener and I'm super duper hooked. And so I'm listening to some back episodes and you guys did one about feeling secure when you're single. And so I just wanted to share my story. I've been really happily single for 3 or 4 years now. And what I recognized that I was doing is whenever I was in a relationship, I would have all these house projects that I just really wanted done. I wanted to be able to show the person that I was with that my living room looks really nice or my backyard is put together or whatever. So I just started doing all those projects. And what it resulted in is every time I walk in my house, I'm like, oh my God, look at this incredible place that I've built all on my own and I'm so happy and comfortable and it just feels really good in my physical space. So I just want to share that. Y'all are the best. Bye.
Well, thank you so much, Emily, for calling. And I'm so happy that you are embracing the single life. Like myself, I know that you're feeling like the empowerment that comes with being single. And I just love that you are being creative and building your own space and making it your own and being happy and proud in that space. And I think just knowing who you are and what you're capable of and being proud of that, keep going. I'm so happy for you. And thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, I really love to hear that too. And it actually kind of resonated with me because that's how I've always felt about my house. I've always wanted my house to be this place, not just for a partner actually, but for anybody that comes to feel safe and comfortable. And almost for me, it was always making it like a cabinet of curiosities, this odd, a place of oddities and cool stuff on the walls that made you want to walk around and look at everything on the walls and and just kind of you could hang out there for an hour without even talking to anybody. And so I think it's important to do that because you aren't always going to be with the same person forever. And so building hobbies and building things that are important for you and important for you to share with other people will persist, once they're gone. And you can always still look back and be proud. The only downfall is if there's anything ever that you're like, well, this reminds me of him. And then I would say that would be a, unfortunate part, but hopefully
just burn it. No, I'm
kidding. Just burn that. Just burn that. But no, I really like this. It was kind of just a nice little thing just to think about this is a good way to look at being single. I think. And so even though this isn't a question for somebody, I think it was good for people to hear, like a happy single person who's built a nice, happy single life.
Yeah, you're creating your own story and you're finding out who you are deep down without any other outside influences, and it feels good.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Emily. And you too can call and say whatever you'd like. Leave us a voicemail at the DKS hotline at 407-519-0181. When I did personally request a bunch of you to do it, we had several people do it. Yeah, so we're gonna ask again, because the more we get, the more we can have in queue. If we do get enough, we will do an episode where it's just user questions. That's all. Listener questions.
User. What is this?
Yes, computer
programs.
Thank you for the call. Yes, but yes, listener questions, and we'll do an entire episode full of those, because that could be kind of fun sometime too. So
we did a grab bag like that a long time ago, but that was like based off of Facebook questions and stuff. But I think calls are more impactful, and it's also good to hear everybody call in.
No, yeah, I like having that, like the different voices. Everybody gets sick of listening to the two of us, so they get to hear
obviously
other people as well, obviously.
More you than me, but no.
Yeah, of course. Well, I get sick of listening to myself, so I know.
I know, cut you off. Well, before we get into our next part, we will not be doing a what to see this episode. We actually have a special story, but we do have a disclaimer that comes with it that I don't know, Adam, if you want to share the disclaimer. It's kind of your story to read and expose to the world. I think what we're going to do for our next part is not that our show is ever child friendly, but I think this part is more particularly not child friendly. It's really not friendly for anybody. Eye-opening, and also just big what the fuck energy.
Yeah,
I think.
Basically, yeah. It's got an explicit nature to it, and it's a little horrifying at the same time. So we will. I'll give you the setup or the intro to that when we get back from break.
Remember that one time I wrote some erotica for some foot clients? And I talked about, just made some money. I wrote 2 or 3 stories, and then I read them on air like months later.
Yeah, we did. I think we did a few excerpts on air, and then we posted the rest on our Patreon.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
The erotic reading of, foot fetish stories and things like that. See, I like writing these, but I think what we're going to get into is not going to be like what I've done in the past.
No, I don't think this is quite your level of quality. And to tell you what we're about to do here. So a friend of mine had another friend who went on a date with a guy. This guy, they're on our first date, and they didn't know each other. So there's just like 2 first dates of strangers. And she asked him if he had any hobbies. He said no, except that he writes lesbian erotica. And so then,
what an interesting hobby.
I know.
How do you pick that up? That's your only hobby.
Yes.
Okay.
So then he sent this, what I'm going to read to you. He sent this to her unsolicited. Just like, here's some of my writing. And I don't know if he thought this was going to impress her or like turn her on or something. But
did she mention on the date that she wanted to read anything, or that's interesting? Or when he brought it up,
I think she was probably like, oh, interesting, like in a
but that's it.
Yeah. I think. So then she shared it with my friend, because he texted it to her, and then she shared it with me, and then I shared it with Sarah. I texted to her just unsolicited. I didn't even give her any preamble. I was like,
no, not at all.
And Sarah's like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. So
then I shared it I was at dinner with my group of people, and I was sharing it around the table, and everyone's like, what the fuck am I reading? So yeah, this is that.
Yes. So this is going to be, I'm going to read this to you. And I'm going to try to do my radio voice for it, just to make it even more hilarious. This is the lesbian erotica as written by a man who we know has never made a woman come. So
for sure. No, this is just the assumption after this is written. Of course. Yes. Yeah. Don't laugh at all. I'm trying not to
laugh as I do this, but here we go. Hopefully everyone enjoys. Please have your children put earmuffs on.
Cover your children's ears now.
Hold on. Okay. You were over having a good time drinking wine with her. She commented on how gorgeous you are. You came back that you thought she was stunning. She said all she had was her boobs. Next thing you know, you're both comparing each other's breasts, and she pulls her tits out.
All sorry. That was too much right there.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
just okay. You ask to touch. She says yes, but instead of using your hands, you lean down with a smile on your face, looking her in the eye. You traced her breast and nipple with your tongue. She started to moan a little as she ran her fingers through your hair. Once you stopped teasing her, she wanted to show you something in her bedroom. You walk into her room and she closes the door behind her and pushes you into the bed. She climbed on top of you and kissed your lips. Breathing gets heavier. As she moves to kissing your neck, she starts to work her way down, pulling your tank top down, and starts to suck on your nipples. While enjoying her tongue, she slowly runs her hands down your stomach and takes off your shorts. Okay.
We're stopping there. Do we want to? No. Okay.
No, you want any commentary so far?
No, my one commentary, a couple of things. The second person, this all being from second person is really throwing me off.
Well, and it's also like weirdly like past tense and then present tense at the same time. And they don't have names, of course. So this is how you know it's a man writing it, is two women. Neither of them have names, in any way.
You couldn't even pick like Sarah and like Jessica or something, just like basic white girl names or something. Also the other thing that always gets me is she starts to work her way down.
Yeah.
Just that phrase in general makes my eyes roll. I'm like, come up with a more creative way to say that.
Right.
That's just me.
There's also like you lean down with a smile on your face. Where else is the smile? Like, of course, it's on your fucking face. You can just say lean down smiling or with a smile.
I would like some dialogue, but I don't think
I don't think we're
ready for that.
All right, yeah. Let's get to
okay. Keep going. I have to close my eyes when you talk.
Placing her hand on your vagina, you gasped. She smiled. I know.
I was not ready for that line.
She smiled and slid her tongue down. She looked up and you nodded in approval as she kissed your clit, your back arched. You reach down to grab her head and she licks each side before shoving her tongue into you. As she is pushing her tongue into you, you can't help but moan. Running your fingers through her hair, you look down at her fucking you with her tongue. She knows you're about to come. She moves to your clit and slides in 2 fingers and pushes them up as she sucks on your clit, sliding her fingers in and out while flicking your clit with the tip of her tongue. You really start to scream. Enjoying all your noises, she smiles and fingers you even harder, moving your hips and squeezing her fingers as your cum shoots down her hand. She doesn't stop sucking your clit until you are shaking. So there's
the end
break. No, not the
end. Oh no,
we're still a little to go.
You're right.
Yes, we have to enjoy the entire piece to appreciate the entire.
Wow.
Yes, this man's talents.
I felt like
I've never said the word. I've never said the word clit so many times in my life.
Yeah,
I felt the same way.
That was a lot of clit there.
A lot of clit and clit. Yeah.
Also, I think what was the line? As she kissed your clit, you arched your back. All of a sudden, like my back, immediately, slowly arched back. Just some kind of adjective or something to set the scene more. I don't know. I just felt like my back.
My back, and I feel like we're only about like a 30 seconds in, and she's already coming, which is just a very interesting as well.
I mean, men think that women come every time, so are we surprised by that? No.
Well, at least the men who don't think that women's orgasms are a myth. The other ones is the other group of men. Okay, let's continue.
Wait, do you think this person? Do you think this person watches porn?
Yes.
I
think they probably watch like professional porn where it's like fake stories, and they don't actually. If they've ever watched like amateur porn where it's like people actually having sex,
right?
That'd be my guess.
Okay.
But I bet if he watches porn, he probably comes in the first 12 seconds and never actually makes it far enough to even learn what a clit is, because the way he describes it too is a little interesting. I don't know. Okay.
Keep going. Let's continue this experience together.
She takes her hand and licks only a finger. She reaches up and has you lick her fingers too. You taste
I don't know. I can't.
I know. Okay, hold on.
I'm just visualizing that.
You taste so sweet that you just can't take it anymore. You look down at her and tell her that it's her turn. Getting up, she goes to lay down. You stop her and put her on her hands and knees. Teasing her, you slide your hands down her back as you are gazing at her throbbing pussy. You then lean in and blow on her pussy, seeing that she's dripping wet. Smacking her ass before squeezing it, you push her cheeks apart and you start to lick her from the back. As you make her come almost immediately, she starts to push back on your tongue and you can't help but moan to vibrate your tongue inside her. She starts to scream and you push your tongue even deeper. She gushes all over your tongue. Before you can adjust, she spins around to kiss you with her cum still on your tongue. You make out while rubbing your hands all over each other. You fall to the bed with her as you both laugh a little bit. Yes, the interaction is good. Anyone watching this on YouTube will enjoy what Sarah was just doing.
Well, I've been covering my eyes for most of this. So
I feel like this paragraph, the word pussy and the word tongue were like overused.
Throbbing pussy is what gets
pussy,
me.
Yes, throbbing pussy. This man maybe has never seen a naked woman in his life. That is also a possibility.
Also, just the positions she spins around. I don't know.
What about you then lean in and blow on her pussy? What? Like, are you dusting it off? You just like you're about to like shine it with your sleeve, like make sure it's all nice and shiny. I don't understand what are you blowing on? I feel like maybe he writes gay porn, and he just replaced some words in here.
Pussy, clit,
he and she, basically, like essentially, like
pretty
switch
much,
it up. Maybe like maybe that's what this is, but I don't know. We're almost done though, so we're almost there.
Thank God! Please let this end.
Okay. She whispers in your ear and says she wants you to sit on her face. You climb up her body. Apparently you're like King Kong. You climb up her body.
Yep.
But before you sit on her tongue, you decide to turn around and face her pussy. As you lower your pussy down onto her face, you lean down and wrap your arms around her legs and spread her lips apart. You begin to slide your tongue all over her throbbing wet clit. She then reaches around your legs to firmly grasp your ass, to spread your cheeks apart and trace your lips with her tongue to taste all of you. She then sucks your clit into her mouth and starts flicking it with her tongue, immediately making you moan into her. And she starts to moan and vibrates her tongue, which just excites you more. We'll take another break for a second there.
Oh, you want to take a break? Okay, you're ready to take a break?
Yeah, we're almost done.
I feel like this is a game of Twister of put one hand here, right? Move your body here, then she's there, and I don't know. It's
climb up and you turn around and then you spread apart. It's like it's more like it's like the bop. It's like the bop it or whatever. Climb it, spread it, climb it, spread it, eat it, blow it, flick it, bop it. Oh,
I can't. Take us home, Adam. Take us home. Okay.
There we go. Here's the climax. No pun intended. The breathing gets heavier. Sorry, the breathing, just in general, just the breathing. Okay.
Have we not been breathing? No.
Just the breathing. The breathing gets heavier as the two of you start making each other move and grind on each other's faces. As the moaning keeps building up to you both screaming into each other's pussies, burying your faces in the other and making each other come even harder. As you both are dripping and covered in cum, you spend the rest of the time licking up the sweet nectar from each other's pussy. The end.
I just think like, oh,
okay. You're screaming into each other's pussies. Yeah. Echo. Like, I mean, what are you doing? What are you screaming? And also, how are you grinding on each other's faces?
It beats the fuck out of me. What's that anatomy?
That's not a 69, because I don't like, even with a 69, you can't still grind on each other's faces. Maybe from the side. I really don't know how that's happening. Like, there's not really a way for you both to grind on each other's faces. So
sweet nectar from each other's pussies.
Nectar from each other's pussies. So
but you're covered in cum, but it's the sweet nectar. I don't know. It's just cum and then sweet nectar in the same, like, sentence.
So this guy should maybe get a new hobby.
Also, sending that unsolicited, I think might be worse than getting an unsolicited dick pic. Could be wrong, but this feels just as violating.
It really does. It really does. This is just, I'm glad we were able to share this with our audience. And I hope maybe he will actually hear this and know that he should never do that again. And by do that again, I mean speak to a woman. Not just write erotica. You can write all the erotica you want, just don't share it with anybody, dude.
Yeah. No, so I was talking to Roy about this, and he was like, there's so much bad literature out there, Sarah, and he introduced me to like Wattpad and some of these other things, and he's like, read this for a minute, and I was like, no, this is bad too. Like there's a lot of bad,
there's that whole men writing women
out there,
men writing women thing where it's just like, like she walked down the stairs, her breasts leading the way or something like that, like it's always got like the weirdest descriptions of things. But like in some ways it's almost like at least that's descriptive. Like this is just confusing. Like if you had to ask me to draw this, I couldn't draw or direct this as a porn. I wouldn't be. I'm like, all right, now scream into her. What do you mean? I don't know. Just scream into her vagina, just put your mouth in there and just go, whatever. Like, just scream into her,
I want to know if anyone got turned on by listening to that. Maybe just your voice. I feel like would be convincing. It could be just my voice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Maybe it was just because I did the radio voice, but beyond that, no. I mean, the words alone are not enough because this was some bad, awful shit. This was almost as bad as the 50 Shades of Grey books.
I never read those.
I'm having another hard stand here. The 50 Shades of Grey, the 50 Shades of Grey books read like they were written by someone who'd never had sex before. Like they really were that bad. So this maybe could be a precursor to that. It's the lesbian version.
Well, maybe this individual can then write a book. That's his next plan. I get it. You don't have to be like good at your hobbies, but I think if you're going to show off your hobbies, it should be a little better. But maybe I'm a dick.
It'd be like, oh yeah, I love to paint, and then it's like a paint by numbers thing that you did wrong. Like it's the same type of thing. Oh, yeah. I love to make pottery, and you hand them a cup, and it doesn't actually hold anything because it's got a hole in the bottom. Like it's basically like if you're bad at a hobby, you probably shouldn't share it with people until you get a little better.
Right. Unless you say, I just started taking these classes because I'm interested in it. That's different than saying, oh, this is my hobby. I expect a little bit higher quality stuff, but that's just me.
Rereading this line here. She takes her hand and licks only a finger. She reaches up and has you lick her fingers too. Like it's just so awful.
And just like blindly here. It's for you.
What, did you just like shove your fist in her mouth then? Like
weird. Interesting.
Wow. So yes, thank you for taking that journey. Instead of a what to see with Sarah G, we have what never to see when you have your eyes closed.
Hope you don't have nightmares segment.
That's right. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about pretty privilege.
Adam, do you feel bonita? Because you look bonita. If you don't understand that, it's like a TikTok reference, but
that's right.
Speaking of pretty privilege, have you, since the beard, I don't know, just your overall
my piercing eyes, yes, all of
that. Yeah. How many drinks have you received for free, or what things have you received for free for your pretty privilege if you've experienced it?
Not very much. I don't think I've gotten much for free.
No.
Yeah, I think I don't think I have quite that pretty look, that people aspire to have. I have more the scary guy look. So people might give me free things because they're scared of me. Is there scary privilege?
I don't know.
Is that a whole other topic?
Maybe. I haven't heard of this, so please do tell. But no, I don't think so.
Well, we are going to talk about pretty privilege. We're going to talk about
We're going to talk. Okay.
We're going to discuss. We're going to argue.
Yes. We might argue a little bit. I think the word privilege is really where we get hung up on.
Yeah. So
the phrase pretty privilege, but
just the concept of it and kind of maybe explore it a little bit, because I think it's something that is out there and worth discussing, and it affects everybody in some capacity, whether you're pretty or not. It can affect you. So, first of all, did you know that there's an actual like academic term for the study of people who are pretty?
Of course I haven't fucking heard of that. I don't pull academic research studies into things.
This is
So
your
what
place
is
to be
it?
like, just read it off the agenda and be like, duh, it's called
No, I'll
pulchronomics.
just
Like you
let
should
you
have just
have that one.
you should have just
Take it.
pretended like you knew. Yes. It's called pulchronomics. Pulchronomics. And it's the study of people who are pretty, basically, and study of the attractiveness of people. I'm sure it's something more specific than that, but that's the general way that I'm describing it. And I think that basically what we're going with, and this is just a quote that I got from what this study means, what the actual pulchronomics means, is that if someone is easy on the eyes, the enjoyment we derive from looking at them colors our perceptions of their other attributes.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. So
yeah,
this episode is going to be talking about is pretty privilege a real thing? Like, do pretty people get things that other people don't? And then is it a good thing? And is it something that is good, bad, neutral, maybe a little bit of everything? So that's what we're going to talk about.
Oh yeah. Well, do you think it's a real thing?
I do. I think I don't want to call it pretty privilege, and so
I know you don't like that phrase.
I don't like the phrase pretty privilege. But do attractive people get things for free, get things that other people don't? Yes. And I'm going to let you kind of talk about this a little bit.
Oh, I mean, I definitely think, just before we've even thought about talking about this episode, I've always thought like pretty privilege has always been a thing. And I definitely received things for free, like in my early 20s and just in college and starting out in my career. I felt that, like, oh, because I'm pretty, oh, because whatever, just like I just had a vibe of just feeling like I was lucky. There's also like that term, like lucky girl syndrome or whatever, floating around, which I think could in some cases get wrapped up into pretty privilege
with that one
to a degree. I mean, it's like the thought that if you keep thinking that good things are going to happen to you, they will happen to you, and just like keep perpetuating like, oh, I'm just so lucky, oh, I'm just so lucky. And some of like, I think where people get upset with pretty privileges, like sometimes pretty people don't have to work for things and they're just lucky and like things just happen to them. So I think you could, I'm not going that deep on it, but I think you could say to a degree that those two things could be related in certain scenarios of like, oh, she was pretty, that's why she got lucky getting that position or made more money or whatever the case may be, of why she felt lucky because she's pretty. Like, and when we say like pretty privilege too, it's like by society's standards. And I think like whiteness definitely like plays into that, femininity. Like if we're talking about like women experiencing pretty privilege, like there's a femininity aspect to it. There's like a symmetry with your face aspect and just body type. Like all of those things kind of fall into someone who, like, if they have all those attributes, get the most benefit from pretty privilege. And I don't like the word benefit is also just like, I'm not thinking of a better word, but they get more pretty privilege because they have those things.
So let's maybe talk like specifically, we can say too that there's actually been scientific studies on this, and scientific studies that have shown that people who do have like that symmetry and do have that societal attractiveness do tend to have more things, like they get advantages in certain ways that over the long run, I may disagree, are actually advantages, but they feel like advantages in the beginning, at least. And right. So let's get into some specific examples.
Okay. Well, I think just like people say, for example, like you're hosting an event or you're out in public handing out flyers or whatever, and like there's two different people presenting something on the street or whatever. I think people will just more likely gravitate towards the person they perceive to be more attractive, and they might get more opportunities just because of how they look, which then leads into like the halo effect of like, because they're attractive, they're smarter, they're more skilled in whatever they're talking about. They have like all of these other great qualities just because they look a certain way, which is not necessarily true. Just because you are, might be attractive to one person and think that you're experiencing pretty privilege doesn't mean you're qualified or whatever. Right. All the other things don't necessarily count.
I said earlier, basically, where the enjoyment we derive from looking at pretty people basically colors our perceptions of their other attributes. Like it makes their other attributes seem better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I assume. Okay.
Or you just like ignore, oh, they might not be great in that thing, but like, look how great that, like they must be great, or
Right.
like you might oversee things that you wouldn't if you were talking to someone who wasn't conventionally pretty by society standards, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we have to make that clear. And I think that, but I don't think we have to keep also qualifying it. Like I think we just say when we say pretty, we're just saying society. We're not saying
yes.
We think you're pretty or ugly or whatever. Like it's just we're just using these terms in a societal like description just to make it easier. So some other specific things like and I think that like some of the ones that are the more obvious ones are like ladies' night at a bar. And the women who are dressed in the hottest women getting into the club for free,
skipping the line,
not having to wait, getting invited to go to like fun events and getting like asked to be plus ones because because they're attractive. I feel like that's a whole group of things that happen, right? Have you had anything like that happen with you?
I've definitely had the free drinks happen and invitations to free events, but I've been with both men and women for the events. It was just like being outside of a bar and then all asking like, oh, do you guys like want to come in and be in our VIP section? And it was just like a group of 6 of us, like probably 2 guys and 4 girls. And like, we all got into VIP and it was whatever. And I didn't attribute that to like, I just thought like lucky, like, oh, we were just there at the right time and whatever. I didn't really think it was pretty privileged, but like that could be perceived to a degree as pretty privileged. Definitely like the free drinks and people offering them across the bar or whatever. It's like, oh, because I'm cute, whatever.
Yeah,
thanks for the drink. Bye. Yeah.
And I think it'd be like, sometimes free shit. Like you just, someone buys your coffee for you, or someone, like you get a free upgrade, or, like the guy behind the counter is like, oh, I gave you an extra, whatever, like little things that happen just because, or like, you go to a hotel and like, oh, we're going to upgrade you to a suite, things like that. There was a whole episode of 30 Rock where they had this conversation with John Hamm,
yeah,
where basically like he's like, you mean people just don't hand you things, and it's just like they're basically talking about it in a funny way. And I thought that was a clever approach to it, because he was a fucking idiot at the same time too, like but he
got everything
he wanted, and then I think by the end of the show he had managed to lose both of his hands, and he had hooks on both of his hands because like something like that, because like something he tried to high five through a helicopter. It was something weird, like it was something like just he was just that that dumb. But yeah. So okay, so there's this whole idea that that you can get free things. Now that is an example of pretty privilege, but I also it's one of those funny things that I'm like, I'm definitely not pretty. Like I know that I'm not pretty, okay, that I might be symmetrical, but I'm not pretty. But I am charismatic, and I'm easy to talk to, and I will talk to anybody, and I can have a conversation with anybody. And I get free shit all the time too, and I get upgrades all the time, and I get random things, just because of personality. And so it's a little interesting to me sometimes to think of it as being a privilege, when I'm like, I could probably make that happen. Yeah. I mean, and it's like, I just remember like there's times where I remember I had someone I dated, we dated on our second date. She's going to go see Motion City Soundtrack play. And she had a ticket for general admission. And I think I was like, oh, I don't really want to buy a ticket for that. It was at House of Blues. And I just called the House of Blues and talked to him, and then got us like free tickets up at the press tickets, just by bullshitting basically. Yeah. And the other day I went and got an oil change, and just talking to the guy about his life and stuff like that. And he gave me $20 off, just because, he was like, oh yeah, let me give you a discount on this. Yeah. Just because we got along. So there is that aspect of it. And I think that then it's like, well, if it's something that can happen just because you're nice too, well, then is it something that's relegated to the pretty privilege? And it's a weird...
I think if you don't have that charisma when you talk to people, you can still get those benefits, and it would still just be pretty privilege.
That makes sense. I guess that makes sense.
But you could still like for instance, like I didn't have to pay for my car to be looked at back in Seattle, and the guy was like, oh no, like thanks for moving your car, because you're saving me time and energy. So I think it was like the charisma aspect, and also potentially the pretty privilege of just like a girl dressed, whatever at a tire shop or whatever the hell. So I don't know. It could be both.
I got into an argument on TikTok about this. And the woman who was arguing with me was like, she goes, I don't even have to pay for wiper blades to be put on. I'll just go buy them at the supply store or the auto store and they'll put them on for me or whatever. And I was like, yeah, they did that for me too.
Don't they do that automatically? Yeah.
I don't know if they do it automatically. No, I think that a lot of them won't do it anymore actually. But it was just, it was funny because I think there are examples that, that maybe are a little bit like less obvious. And I think one of the big ones is careers. And I think this is one that scientifically has shown up, that basically the people who are pretty get hired more frequently, they get promoted more. Is there more that happens? They get
they get more money. They're more likely to make more money in the long run as well. Yeah.
So that's a scientifically proven thing that they've shown in the studies. And so I think that's that is what probably, when people say kind of pretty privilege, is probably the most privileged thing you can think of is, obviously your career, which can affect you, getting a free drink here and there. It's like, whatever. But like, if it like has a positive effect on your long-term career, then can that be considered a privilege? And I would say that most people would say it can.
Definitely.
I'm gonna argue against it in a little bit, but like for now, we'll talk about it. So
I think to a degree it is a privilege to be able to like get that interview, or even if you're, and it's fucked up, right? Like I'm not saying like pretty privilege is right by any means. Like you're definitely ignoring a huge group of people who are probably also skilled and worthy of getting those benefits, but you're just going based off of looks, which is fucked up, but it does happen. But I think like it's a privilege if like you're in that position and you have the skills or whatever, and then that's what like pushes you to the next level of actually getting that job, is because like, oh, because of the halo effect, oh, she seems more trustworthy, or she like they might feel more charisma or something when they have a conversation with you, that like that would push you over the edge to then get that job. Maybe it's not the main factor of why you got that job, but it definitely didn't hurt you.
Sure. Okay, so I think we kind of explored maybe what it is enough, do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, more examples you want to talk about? I mean, I don't know.
I have other examples. I remember when you started TikTok and you were always saying, like the algorithm favors attractive women on the platform, so that they're pushing more people like that. And that was an example to me of like, oh, that's pretty privileged. Like people are getting like dolled up for social media to, hit the algorithm just right to promote their shit or be seen more and grow their following because they look a certain way. And it's also like, again, go fucked up because like there's a lot of Black content creators out there who they're not showing up in the algorithm just based off of their skin color, but like white and attractive creators are showing up more.
Yeah.
So it's like a privilege for those creators to continue to be pushed.
That's a good example, and one that I think a lot of people wouldn't think about. I'm just trying to see what other examples we have that might be like just to really kind of talk about, to really kind of expand it to everything, how it affects so many people too.
Well, I think with like, I know we'll get into the next layer of this, but I think I also read that children experience like a degree of pretty privilege, like when they're growing up. The more attractive children feel more able to get more confidence and be like who they are, and they're more accepted in that just based off of looks. And that starts at like a young age of like 8 to 10 or younger.
We all know somebody who probably started off as the pretty child, and then
things kept happening, and confidence
and assured of themselves, and then you meet them as an adult and you're like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? I feel like that's a lot of people. I mean, it's like kind of almost like the Harvard effect, people who got into Harvard, but once they got into Harvard, you realize they're really not that smart. They just were able to get into Harvard. And then like, that's why Harvard always has the whole gentleman's B thing, where like, they don't want people to flunk out because it would reflect badly on the school. So then you meet all these people who like have always gone through life with advantages. And, and I think that, that can eventually bite them in the ass when they get to a point where they're expected to actually perform something or to do something and they can't do it because they're fucking idiots.
It's definitely going to catch up to you. Like, you can't just ride that wave for forever. At one point, it's either going to be a really negative experience or it'll be positive until you can't hold your own without that privilege existing.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, and I hear a lot, this is like, and it's such a, it's so hard to talk about this without feeling like you're insulting people, but I hear a lot of ugly people talk about this. But
You're saying the phrase ugly people. I know what you mean.
I don't mean actual ugly people, but I mean people who don't experience it. But if we're gonna say pretty, then we're gonna say ugly. Or let's say plain. I don't know what we say. Not pretty people, whatever. But you know who I'm talking about. And like I'm not someone who's pretty, so I'm you know whatever. People are the opposite of pretty, I guess. Who do see it as a negative, and they are like not the privilege as a negative. Their existence is negative. They get pissed when they see other people getting these things for being attractive.
Because they work harder or they've been there longer or whatever the case may be, and other people are rising to the top before them. Right. And it's not fair. Yeah.
So I feel like that can turn into a negative of getting the advantage, because then you have a lot of people resenting you for where you've been.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of hate and just envy pushed on those people who are experiencing that privilege. That would cause the people experiencing pretty privilege to not have a great time.
Right. So like, and so it can be hard. And I think that the other thing is that people aren't necessarily going to believe that someone made it based on skill when they're pretty. So they're kind of at the same time that they're valued as like, oh, you're going to do well at this job. There's also a group of people devaluing them for the same reason, which is interesting.
That 100% happened at my first job. It was like, I felt like I got a lot of benefits of experiencing the pretty privilege, but then when it came time to like presenting my own ideas, and it was also a level of ageism too, but when it came to presenting my own ideas and just advocating for myself, it was always just like, oh, well, this like young, pretty girl, what the fuck does she know? She's whatever. And I always got pushed to the side where my ideas were on par with what I should be presenting. And I didn't have, you know, I wasn't presenting garbage. It was things that would have been helpful, but all of my stuff got pushed to the side because the fuck does this girl know?
So then it's like a weird thing of like, how much of an advantage, like you feel like if, you know,
it was only an advantage to a point, and then it became, well, I want them to see me. I had to push even harder to say, I want them to see me for more than just what they saw me before.
Yeah.
It was great. And like, I don't know, for learning and getting accepted and people building trust in me. But at the same time, it was also turned into a negative later on, probably 6 months down the road. I was like, oh, I don't like this anymore.
Right. So, yeah. So that's really interesting. I mean, you had that experience too, because I feel like that kind of almost like says that then how much of a privilege is it really in that case? Like how much is it if it then becomes an experience where people won't listen to you because they're projecting either jealousy or an insecurity on you too.
Yeah, no, I think there's a level. I think if it's one free drink and you can move on with your life, you get the free drink, you toast the person across the bar and you move on with your day and you get that free drink. Fuck yeah. Like I'm going to take it and I'm going to use my attractiveness to my advantage. Absolutely. But if it's another level of like, now I have to stand here and talk to this person for 30 minutes because I feel obligated to, and whatever, then it becomes a negative, you know, like but it always depends on the situation. Sometimes you can just get away with just experiencing the benefit of whatever that thing is. And other times there's like a tail end negative to it, but it just depends on what the overall person, like the person giving you things, what their intention is.
Okay. I can understand that. Yeah. And do you think it is okay then, like to kind of use your attractiveness to your advantage?
I think so. It's like if you can get it for free, get it for free. Like work that shit. But just know, like, you know, for certain situations, like if, for example, if you are getting pushed in a TikTok algorithm, or you're constantly getting all these free things, and you notice other people and other, you know, the ugly people, if you notice the people outside of your group not experiencing those things, maybe it's time to say something or say like, why aren't they experiencing that? Or, you know, that's kind of wrong or whatever, to, you know, whatever that degree may be.
Yeah. I think if you use it to your advantage and the advantage of other people around you, that's like, it's a little more altruistic. You know, like if you're like, oh yeah, I'm coming with my friends or whatever, like you're trying to be inclusive in it. But if it's something where you're using it and then you're like, you think you're better because of it, that's where it becomes an issue. And I think that's where I think people could have almost a right to resent it, is if someone has those things happen and then thinks that they're better because of they're a better person, or they're somehow just better than you because they get that shit. Yeah. That's where I am like, yeah, you should resent that person, because that person's not a good person.
Well, then it becomes their personality of, oh, when I always go out, I get free drinks. I am the center of attention. I'm hot shit. I'm a 10,
right.
You know, and that becomes their personality of just like, I'm a higher class than you just because of how I look. And that is fucked up to think, and to put other people beneath you just based on how they look and nothing else.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that does happen sometimes too. And I think that, you know, it's usually those people are very shallow.
Yeah.
And so I think that we can determine and very clearly, and I think it's that people do get advantages for attractiveness. They do, and it is specific, and sometimes it's not attractiveness, sometimes it's charisma, sometimes it's talent. There are other reasons people get advantages, but attractiveness is one of them. That you can have nothing but attractiveness and get a lot of advantages in life, almost scientifically proven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people like to call that pretty privilege. So that's you know, I think that, you know, then the issue is it an actual privilege? And that's what I wanted to kind of talk about, because I think it's a little bit more of a nuanced discussion on, is it a genuine privilege? And I think that's, you know, that's where we can get into it a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like at face value, a free drink, a free trip, like a free thing on a guy's yacht, a free whatever, getting the job offer, like looking at it at face value is like, yeah, that's a benefit. Like that's a privilege.
Right.
There's no downside. But I think, like we discussed early on, it might be a benefit, and then there might be more implications for other people's intentions or whatever that could make it a negative. But at face value, I think, yeah, of course, it's a privilege.
Well, and I think, yeah, I agree with you. On face value, you look at it, it feels like a privilege. And then I think it's also the word privilege that we define differently when it comes to groups of people. Like, you know, if you have a privilege of doing something, it's a benefit. You know, I had the privilege of doing this, I had the honor of doing this, etc. That's a privilege. But then we use privilege in the sense of male privilege and white privilege. And when we use it in the sense of male privilege and white privilege, we're talking about basically a societal blindness that we get by being white. Since we're both white, we'll start with that one, because obviously you're not a man, but we both get that, you know, that we don't think about. And that means things like getting pulled over by the cops is not something where we fear for our lives.
Right.
And that's an element of white privilege, because generally it's not, you see people of color getting, you know, legitimately murdered by police, but it's not something that we don't think about. And there's a lot of things, like just walking through a store and not being followed around, and like, there's a lot of little things that we think about as far as white privilege. As male privilege, of course, there's
walking alone at night.
Walking alone in the, you know, walking to your car in the daylight and not worrying about anything, you know, going to the gym, you know, like just all of these things you can do that are male privilege. And I've got a whole TikTok series I'm working on, the ABCs of male privilege. I'm on letter C right now, and it's just like, it's crazy how much there is, though. And it's all these things that society has done as a privilege, and like the fact that, you know, that doctors still don't really understand how women handle anesthesia as much as they do men, because all of the testing and all the scientific studies that have been done except for the last recent, you know, period of time, have all been on men. And crash test dummies are shaped, you know, are designed like men, you know, like, and things like that, like all these things.
Right.
And so male privilege means living in a world where you have things you don't even have to think about or worry about. And so when we say pretty privilege, it tends to get used in that same capacity of saying, it's like pretty privileged just have all these things handed to them, and they never have to focus on the world, or they're treated so differently that they're blind to how your average person, your uggo, is treated. And we're just going to go with uggo as the new word. All of us uggos are treated in a certain way, and pretty privileged people, but I don't think that part's necessarily true.
I don't think that's the case, though. Yeah, right. I think people who are experiencing pretty privilege definitely recognize what they're getting isn't the norm for other individuals.
Unlike in that 30 Rock episode where John Hamm was like, what, you don't mean it doesn't happen? Like, he was
Right,
obviously
yeah.
blind to it. But I think in the real world, people are not as blind to it. And I think that what I see, and this is my perspective from talking to, having a lot of conversations about gender and equality and things like that, is I have a lot of men who are like, well, male privilege isn't a thing. Women have pretty privilege, so that's the same thing.
But not all women experience pretty privilege regularly. I think it's
Right.
mostly within a certain age group of women that experience it. And if I had to guess, it'd probably be from 16 to 25.
Yeah, probably.
And then it probably tapers off after that.
And these same men will say the same thing, that women only have a shelf life of 16 to 25 at the same time that they're saying, which means that they don't consider any women beyond that range to be women or human beings or whatever. Like, it's a really, they don't understand exactly what they're saying when they say this, but they are basically, yes. And so that, but then they're trying to say, well, all these privileges that men, male privilege is balanced out by pretty privilege, which they just call female privilege, of course. And so I think that that's an important thing to kind of figure out, because is it an actual privilege on the same level as male privilege? And I think we just said obviously not, because it doesn't even affect all women.
Right. Yeah. Just a select group of people who look a certain way for a certain amount of time in their life. I think.
So then we get to my theory, which has gotten the biggest pushback on TikTok. I feel like some people were like, you know what, you're right. And I think it's a thing, is that what we call pretty privilege is actually just a function of a systemically misogynistic society objectifying women, and even objectifying pretty men to a degree as well. But that I think that every aspect of pretty privilege, everything that we've talked about, boils down to objectification, and that that everything is someone is then being objectified. And I'll kind of explain why I think this. And then and this was the area that you and I you were like worried we were going to argue about. Yeah, we disagreed about, but I think it actually, we're not arguing about it in this case. But
we're not right now. No, I'm trying to be quiet in the house, but
I know
it's like 10:30 at night.
That's all right. What are they doing? They don't have lives anywhere. They don't have jobs. So they can do whatever. So objectification, and I know it's an obvious term, but just to make it very clear, objectification is viewing or treating a person as an object devoid of thought or feeling, and usually it's targeted at women and teaches women that all they have to offer is their body and their face, and they should put all their effort into physical appearance. So even the definition of objectification is make yourself pretty. So that right there kind of ties into the idea that pretty privilege is almost intrinsically tied to objectification, because objectification is saying if you're pretty, that's where your value is. So that's just something, that's just one thing. But then there's a couple things. We talked about confidence, and it's funny that I was reading these studies on pretty privilege and all like that, and all these studies, these people are actually researching this, and they're coming up with a lot of good information about it, but they're not looking at it from the perspective that I am of it being objectification. They're just trying to see if it exists. And they're saying, yes, this exists. Yes, yes, it exists. People are getting advantages because of their attractiveness, but they're not taking it beyond of, are there disadvantages or, et cetera. And so, but one thing that they said that I think is completely wrong, and I'm like, I don't know how they got this wrong, but I think it's because it's a white dude doing the study, and I think he's just fucking oblivious, honestly, was that pretty women are more confident. And that, so and that confidence is what sells it as well, as the more, because the more they get things, the more confident they are. But I'll tell you what, and this is I've dated a lot of women. I've dated a lot of women that I would say people would consider hot. Okay, in my life, I have.
Okay, and show off.
But I'm not showing off. I'm trying to be very, very but I also have a lot of friends that people would consider extremely hot, to the very, very hot. And they tend to be some of the more insecure people I've ever met in my entire life. And it's because they're not insecure about necessarily their looks, but because they've always been treated differently because of their looks. And so they're insecure on their relationships with other human beings, because they don't know if a person wants to be with them because they're attractive, or wants to talk to them because they're hot, or because they're an actual human being. And I found that everyone thinks that, the the hottest women in the world are the most unapproachable when they're actually the most approachable. Because if you just treat them like human beings, if you just treat them as actual people, who are nerdy and, and have, they get zits and they have, like they're human beings, they appreciate that. That resonates with them more than anything else, because everyone else treats them as a fragile trophy to put on the shelf. And so I think that also just speaks to the objectification. Oh, why are you smiling? What are your thoughts on that?
No. I agree with you to a degree. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have
definitely definitely the pedestal example, like, totally makes sense. I think it's a portion of people who experience the pretty privilege that lack that self-confidence.
Yeah, no, I mean, some of them have confidence because they've
but it's not a blanketed slate.
Yeah. But saying that like they automatically are more confident, I think is actually an erroneous statement. But
they just appear to be confident, I think, because of the attractiveness of just assuming because someone looks a certain way that they actually are. Again, going back to the halo effect.
Yeah, no, very true, very true. So that was one aspect. Then the other thing was, and like I said, it's because I wanted to look at these studies, because this is studies for me to try to say this theory of objectification is actually what it is a little controversial, because people don't want to believe it. Those of us who are the uggos in the world, we want to be mad at the pretty people who have pretty privilege. So we don't want to say that it's objectification, because that excuses it. And then of course men don't want to say that it's objectification, because they want to be able to say that there's no such thing as male privilege. So why would, etc.
And they don't want to be called out on their shitty behavior. So
exactly. Yeah. So like it just becomes a whole thing. So it is a little controversial on that. But so one of the studies was talking about, they're looking at people being treated differently. But even in the study, this is just basically this guy. There's this guy, and his name is Daniel Hammermesh. And of course, like I wish women would study this instead of men. By the way, I feel like there might be a very different study if it was women instead of men, because they're already biased in whatever they're going to study. But he's considered to be the godfather of the economic study of beauty, which is quite a phrase.
Who coined that?
And he and his colleague were the first scholars to track the effect of appearance on earning potential across a large sample of adults. And what he said was that, like many desirable commodities, beauty is scarce, and that scarcity commands a price. So that tells me, by treating beauty as a commodity and actually looking at it in an economic sense, a commodity is something you sell, obviously it's something that you buy or sell. That's an object. You don't do that with a human being. You don't do that with someone with a variety of values. That's what you do to a thing. And so by even in their study referring to beauty as this commodity, they're objectifying the women they're objectifying pretty people even in their own study. What do you think the thoughts on that?
I'm fading fast. I'm really fucking tired, dude. I'm like, can we?
I told you,
dude, it's 10:30.
Oh my God. Sarah does not stay up this late.
I thought we were gonna finish at 10:30, not still be going.
We're almost done.
Oh my God, I'm just fading, dude. Cut that out. I wasn't gonna say anything. Just keep going. Just keep ranting. I'll just be quiet. I have nothing to say. I don't want to be loud, so.
I don't think anybody can hear you.
Well, I can't. No. It's definitely like I can be heard, so I just definitely don't want to talk, because I'm going to get like, I'm tired, number one, and number two, like I want to argue, but like I don't want to make noise. So you caught me at the right time to just shut the fuck up. So
I feel like we should leave that all in, but no, you don't want me to.
I mean, you can, but like, I don't know.
All right, we'll cut it out. And then and I think that, and then one of the other things too is that we have this penalty, and I think you saw this, was at your job, people then wouldn't let you actually show that you had the skills, because they assumed you were just hired because because you were young and attractive. And so you have a penalty of actually being that it's you're treated not as a human being, but as like, oh, you were hired as an object. We're not going to actually let you do any of the work because you're just a pretty thing. Like, you don't actually get to do any of the work. And what it's also become too is a thing where men and women who are hired have higher expectations when they're pretty. And so then when they don't meet those expectations, they're punished even more aggressively. So it has, once again, they're treated because of this extra thing. Like they're treated, oh, well, you have, something that raises you up and now it's going to tear you down. And then I just talked to a lot of women who would say that they were pretty and maybe now they're older and they've kind of fallen out of that pretty privilege environment, And like now they realized how much they hated it, like how much they like kind of being under the radar, how much they like not getting free drinks because what comes with it.
They don't have to talk to shit man or whatever.
Right. Because I think the final thing about objectification, and I'm this has been a long episode, I know, but the final thing about objectification is the stuff that we talked about in the very beginning. What everyone thinks about the pretty privileges, getting into the clubs, like that's very clearly objectification. Like if you were getting in the club, if guys are buying you drinks, it's because they expect something from it. They want it to be transactional, even if it doesn't end up being transactional because you don't respond. There's that burden of having someone expect something from you and then be mad when you won't reply. Or, the guys who invite the hot girls out on the boat, they are doing it to raise their own status. They're doing it for a reason. They're doing it because they're using you as an object, just like, a guy who puts a wig on when he loses hair. It's the same thing. You're just basically something to try to raise his status. So I think those are the most obvious elements of objectification. But the ones that are a little more subtle are the ones like related to work and related to other things. But it all boils into this whole thing of that someone who's pretty is treated like a little trophy, like a little Barbie doll. And when they don't act in the way that you would expect them to, they're actually shunned, which means that they're being treated not as human beings. Hence my entire theory that pretty privilege is not a real thing. It is purely pretty objectification. And that we should call it objectification and we should recognize it as that. And that we should not feel resentful of people who experience those things because of the negatives that they experience as a result of it are equal. We should be happy that we don't have to put up with any of that. Those of us uggos who don't have to deal with pretty privilege.
See, I don't think I think there are some aspects of it being negative, but I don't think it overall is a negative.
I know.
It depends on the situation that you're in. If you get a free drink and they leave you alone, perfect. I've also been in another situation at work where like I dressed a certain way and presented myself a certain way in the office and like things were just great the whole time. Like I didn't get put down because of my looks. Like there was like no negative that I experienced in that job that I think like.
But you're also good at your work, good at your job too. I mean, that's
right.
I think that's part of it.
Part of it, but I'm saying like some opportunities presented itself because I think like I was just right. The lucky girl syndrome of like right situation, right time, also an element of it wasn't 100% pretty privilege, but I never experienced anything negative. So I don't think every single element of the privilege is a bad thing. Like if you are gonna get stuff, know that there could be consequences, but like get it for free while you still can, like you can get the free drinks
knowing
if you
that there's
like
consequences then does still make it objectification. You're just trying to avoid the repercussions of it, right?
But not every single time is it objectification. Like I don't think in any of those jobs like at the beginning I was ever objectified for whatever. I think that just became part of like a halo effect. I don't think I got the job because I was being objectified.
I don't know. The other woman I was arguing with on TikTok, she also said, she's like, I went and the guy at the rental counter upgraded me to a car or whatever, but there was nothing else beyond that. He just upgraded me. He was like, hey, I upgraded you and gave me the keys. So how is that transactional? How is there an objectification? And I was like, because in his mind, he was like, oh, here's something pretty. I want to do something to make the pretty person like me. Like that.
Well, he's just a nice person and it's not that deep. Like it doesn't have to be that deep.
Society just objectifies people, and that's just it is that deep. Like it's another layer behind it.
I don't think that. I think that it just plays into like attractive, like oh she was like charismatic and she's attractive, like subconsciously, like the unconscious bias of it all, and then just like you getting that. Like I don't think the person who gave her an upgrade was actively thinking, how can I like I'm objectifying her,
I agree.
Or like
how can
actively. Or how can I benefit from this? I don't even think like I just think it was just an unconscious thing of just like yeah of course like right place right time seems like seems like a friendly person, seems like a good person based off of her looks, but I don't think that's because she was being objectified.
See, this is where we could get talking circles for it, because I really like this is where I think it is, and I think it's like it's a
but I don't think it's a bad thing. Like congrats, you got
objectification is bad.
But you got the free thing, like you got the thing for free and nothing bad happened to you. So like, how is that bad?
Right. But I feel like for every one of those, there's going to be the one where the guy tracks down her information and sends her a text later on saying, hey, remember me? I'm the guy that gave you the free upgrade. I want to know if you could buy a drink,
But still, what are you supposed to do in that situation? Not take the car keys? Not say, oh, I don't want the upgrade?
No, that's why I'm saying that's why I think it's just not a privilege, because you're stuck in that spot of, yeah, you're going to take it, but then you're also at a risk that someone might not otherwise be.
But that's not an every time occurrence. I think if you have a creep or some like misogynist who's trying to get something out of it, then yes, you're going to be in that situation. But like I like to run off of the theory that like most people operate on like a good conscience and like are genuinely good people, that just like the bias of it all is just like they're just
disagree too, but that
I look for more good in people than negative upon first glance than you do. And I know we disagree with that. I'm not always thinking what's their intention behind that, unless I have a grimy feeling, then I'm thinking I'm objectified. But at the get-go, something free like that, of like a free drink and upgrade, something like that, I'm not thinking, oh, what do they want from me? I'm like, oh, cool, great. They seem nice, like awesome, cool. And I'm thinking as a positive, not a negative. And then I think of it as a privilege.
Yeah. I understand where that comes from. I do. I don't agree, but I understand where that comes from. And I think that, like I said, I think we could talk about this in circles because of how I'm viewing it versus how you're viewing it. They're not that different, but it's almost a matter of like,
it's a fine line of like who it is, who's giving the quote unquote privilege to that person and what their intention is behind it. Sometimes those intentions are negative, and that's where the pretty person would be objectified. But I don't think it's every single case where someone pretty gets something that they're 100% being objectified from the get-go, each interaction.
Right.
Like the barista at Starbucks is just going to give you like a couple free pumps for whatever. How are they being objectified?
I mean, because they're trying to, like, in their mind subconsciously, I'm doing this for this person to get something. Like I want to give myself I helped a pretty person. Like it's almost like it all becomes, it has a transactional nature, even if the person isn't even involved. Like but it might just make the barista feel good that they just, even if it was an uggo, that they gave someone 2 free pumps of vanilla syrup or whatever, and they're like, oh, I made their day. Maybe they were coming at it. But if that was someone who did that regularly for lots of people, then yes, I agree. So it does depend on maybe the person doing it in that sense.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think it's the person behind giving the free things out. What their intention is what makes it.
Well, I will say chances are, if it's a guy doing it, there's objectification involved.
True. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I think it skews more that way of they're trying to get something out of it, for sure.
So I don't think we're not going to resolve this, obviously.
I think no, but I definitely think there are levels of it, like of that individual being objectified, but I don't think every single interaction is that.
Right. But I just want us to stop seeing pretty privilege as like something that the rest of us should resent, like instead just see that it is something that actually comes with plenty of negatives, enough negatives that we should be glad that we're not always involved in that.
No, and I mean, we touched on that, of just like people like being envious, people saying nasty things, people projecting negative things on you because you're getting free things. Like it's not just like a free thing and you never have to worry about the repercussions of something down the road. I think just be careful if you take free things and like you use that privilege to your advantage, just know negative things could come from it and just be aware.
Yeah.
But I think it exists, and I think there's levels to it. It's not as, in my opinion, it's not as black and white as pretty privilege equals being objectified.
Right. I know. But for those of us uggos, I'm just trying to speak for all of us and say that, we also should just be glad that we're not getting the things. Then like we can get things by our own skill instead, and that's even better. It's even better fruits of your labor, basically.
Oh, definitely. It's sometimes nice to just not be bothered, pay for your own thing, and not have to deal with the bullshit of it. And that's totally fair. Yeah. And not to be objectified by that creepy guy.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Depends on the person. That's what it just depends on the person giving you that free thing.
What do you think, audience? That's what I want to know. I'd like to hear what you think. You can email us and tell us what you think at datingkindofsuckspodcast@gmail.com, or tell us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/DKS Podcast.
You can also call our hotline and we can chat more about this on an upcoming episode. That number is 407-519-0181. Can't wait for those calls.
That's right. And if you want to watch Sarah's face while I did that dramatic reading of the erotica, You can make sure you follow us on YouTube and watch the episode on YouTube and youtube.com/dating kinda sucks. And of course, we post clips and everything on Instagram at dating kinda sucks.
And then, of course, for as little as $5 a month, you can join us on Patreon at patreon.com/DKS Podcast. We try our best. It's been hard with me being traveling and having the motivation, but we try our best to post exclusive episodes on there. Maybe do another erotic reading if we have more content from this dude. I don't know.
Right. If we get more of that. Yeah. And yeah, we try to do at least once a month. This month's been a little hard, but we'll make sure we have one for our Patreon listeners. And then finally follow us on TikTok at Adam Heath at simply Sarah G _. And if you are listening on iTunes, we would love a 5-star rating and review. And with that, are you going to be back in the US in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks, yeah, I'll be back in Seattle.
Okay, so our next episode will be from Seattle, and or for Sarah at least, and yeah, but back in the US,
not live from Seattle,
live from Seattle, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. So thank you for listening.
Until next time.
Whether you're married or single or poly or ace, or hanging out with swingers back at your place, listen to us as we give no fuck on Tinder and Bumble and plenty of yucks, trying and having no luck, because we all know dating kinda sucks. Sarah and Adam are two of a kind. He says stupid shit and she doesn't mind. They're not doing this show to make any buck. Life as a chicken whose feathers they pluck. Why does it work? Well, here is the crux. They both know dating kinda sucks. Dating kinda sucks.